Imagine a world where fact is indistinguishable from fiction. In this world, what you see on the television, what you see on your phone, newspaper articles that you read could be completely fabricated. Maybe there's an AI that's creating these videos and sending them out day in and day out. Maybe you're getting emails or tweets or posts or pictures on Instagram that are saying this person is against that thing or that group is against this thing. And you're being influenced every single day by AI. We don't have to put too much time or effort into that thought experiment, because we live in a world where that is at least partially our reality. Interestingly enough, René Descartes, philosopher from 400 years ago, wondered the very same thing that we are wondering today. How can we proceed? How can we live in a world that we don't know if the things that we see around us are true or not? What if everything that we see is fake? That's the question René Descartes asked. And that's the question that we're still asking today, 400 years later. Welcome to Formed, Not Performed. This is a place where we think through philosophical, theological, political, historical questions through a biblical worldview. Today we're talking about René Descartes, and we'll jump into that famous phrase, Cogito Ergo Sum. Any first-year philosophy student loves this phrase. I had it as my away message for years whenever I was first studying philosophy, and I thought I was the smartest kid around. And you've probably heard Cogito Ergo Sum, I think, therefore I am. You're probably vaguely familiar with who René Descartes is, but I wonder if you've stepped back and thought through, how does Descartes' philosophy confront the world that we live in today? So what we're going to do, we're going to talk through Descartes and some of the concepts that he dealt with in his meditations. We're going to analyze this concept and then see how does it apply to the world that we live in today. What's interesting is how this dude from 400 years ago is still causing us to rethink the reality that we live in. So first off, as always, we need to situate Descartes. We need to contextualize him. So we have to understand, why was he writing what he was writing? So in Descartes' time, the old reliable authorities were crumbling. People didn't know if they could trust the authority systems that were in place. This would be governments. This would be the ruling elite. This would be even the church. This would be old money, right? There were institutions that had lasted for hundreds, even thousands of years, and a new system was coming through that was challenging all of those beliefs. And that system of thought is science. You're probably familiar with this, right? So as the scientific method was being developed, as we were thinking through new thoughts, what can we truly know? What can we truly see? What do we believe about the world? This caused René Descartes to question his own worldview. And as he's doing this, he adopted a skeptical perspective. Now, skepticism in and of itself is not a bad thing if it's a tool, if it's a means to an end. So Descartes was not a skeptic as he was just rejecting all reality for the purpose of just being a skeptic. Instead, he wanted to question the reality around him in order to find the very bottom grounded truth. And so this is what Descartes' philosophy was about. Cogito ergo sum is about getting to the very bottom grounding of reality. This is what we know to be true. If everything else is a lie, we can trust this. And so science was challenging these long-held beliefs of his day. People had lost their grounding and didn't really know what they could trust in. And Descartes had wondered, what can we know with certainty? What's the one thing that we can know even if everything else around us is a lie? So he questioned senses, sight, smell, hearing. He questioned the external world that we engage with. He questioned mathematics, even reality itself. How can we know what's true? And as you read through his meditations, what he's doing is he's challenging these long-held beliefs that we have, something that we truly know, that we take for granted. And he's saying things like, how do I know whenever I'm dreaming that dream is not reality? Because, man, there are some times where my dream is so vivid, it feels so real, and then I wake up, and that's reality, not my dream. And so he's questioning, how do we really know what we think we know? And then he gets to the fun part. He gives a thought experiment of, what if there's an evil demon that's kind of controlling everything? So everything that I know, that I see, that I experience is being controlled by an evil demon who's just trying to manipulate and deceive me. What if all of my lived experience is not actually true? What if everything that I see and experience has been manipulated because this evil demon wants to deceive me? What's funny about this, to me anyways, is in his day, if you were reading these meditations 400 years ago, you're probably thinking, dude, you are crazy. What kind of reality do you actually think you live in where you can't trust what your eyes actually see, right? Like, what if somebody shows you an explosion, right? That's a real thing. If you see the explosion, that's real. And yet now, constantly we're seeing AI videos of explosions. How do I know that's a real video or not? And if I'm honest, I can't know that. If I see a video, I have to trust the source, right? If it's a news outlet, I have to then say, do I trust this news outlet? Can I trust that they did their research to validate this video is real? And then I have to ask, where did they get that video from? And where did they get that video from? We have to eventually get to the point where we're saying, I'm trusting the authority of the people around me, and those people could be lying to me. This was Descartes' skeptical worldview. Now, again, in his day, that type of skepticism sounds strange. But to us, this is actually our lived experience. We are bombarded by AI videos, voice cloning, deepfakes, fake media, digital manipulation. How many times have you been shocked by a video that you found out was AI created? That is our lived experience. And so what Descartes was imagining, his thought experiment, is actually a lot more aligned with our reality than the reality he lived in. Descartes imagined a demon that was manipulating his experience. Today, we're engaging with algorithms, with deepfakes, with manipulative media that is doing the very thing that Descartes concerned himself with. And so, where do we go from there? Well, Descartes moves into, this would be his second meditation, and this is where he says, and I quote, I am, I exist, is necessarily true, every time I express it or conceive of it in my mind. Later on in another work, he actually uses the phrase cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Here's what he's saying. The one thing that I know to be true, the one thing, if everything else around is a lie, the one thing that I know is I think. And if I'm thinking, I know that I exist on some level, whether I'm in a matrix or if I'm in Plato's cave and I'm chained up to a wall and all I can see is the shadows, or if I'm living in, France in the 1600s, I can, I don't know if any of that's real or not, but what I do know is I exist. And so that's what I know. I know that for real. And so he starts with the grounding level of at least this is real. Thinking proves existence. Now, this may seem like very elementary and fundamental, and like, why are we even talking about this? In philosophy, thinking, intellectual engagement has always been fundamental to life. Plato said that the unexamined life is not worth living. Or maybe in Socrates. I don't know. So if the unexamined life is not worth living, then that means that we are supposed to examine our life. If Descartes says the one thing that I know to be true is that I'm thinking, and that's important, that's the grounding of my being, then intellectual engagement is important. It was important to the Greeks. It was important to Descartes. It's important to us today. I wonder how often we actually stop and think when we're engaging with AI videos, with deepfakes. How many times are we skeptical and say, I don't know if I can trust that thing? Is that trustworthy? Is this news source trustworthy? I saw somebody just today share a quote from someone else that got debunked. Like it was a ridiculous quote. I don't know why the person believed it in the first place. And I was like, man, this person is credible. Why are they sharing this? Because we get caught up. We get wrapped up in this stuff. We've got to stop and we've got to think. Descartes is saying if everything else around us is false, at least the act of thinking is true and proves our existence. Cogito Ergo Sum. What does this mean to us today? Well, Descartes was trying to find something deeper in life that couldn't be manipulated, because he recognized that everything in life could be manipulated. So he wanted to find the thing that couldn't be manipulated. Today, we're asking the very same thing. What is the truth that cannot be manipulated? That's the question. What can we trust? Descartes' philosophy, though, leads to radical individualism. You actually can trace this through philosophical thought, through history. We have individualism. The individual becomes the most important thing. And while there's a lot of benefit to that, the problem is it's very limiting. If you stop at Descartes and just hold on to Cogito Ergo Sum, you've just accepted the grounding of reality, but you're not moving forward. You're not moving to something deeper. Descartes proved that thinking confirms our existence, and yet it can't answer the deeper questions. Cogito, I think, can still lead to loneliness, anxiety, moral confusion, and spiritual emptiness. So, as much as I love Descartes, he doesn't answer the existential questions of, why am I here? Why do I still feel great anxiety in the world that I live in, even if I can recognize that I exist through my intellectual engagement? Obviously, Descartes was not one of the existentialists, and those guys would come a little later. But we have to understand that there are limits to Descartes' work. Yet, I believe Descartes gave us a grounding on where to move forward, especially in light of the algorithmically deceptive world that we live in today. So we have to understand that we can't create our own objective meaning through the cogito, through the intellectual engagement. Objectivity, something that lives outside of us, we have to find that elsewhere. And that's where the scriptures give us the answers. We are told scripturally that our identity is rooted in God. This is where we find our grounding. This is where we find our objective meaning. Genesis 1:27 tells us that we are created in the image of God. In Acts 17:28, Paul says, "In him we live and move and we have our being." So somehow, some way, we live and move and have our being in God. If you open up the book of John, the Gospel of John, what you will see is that John says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. He'll later on clarify that Jesus is the Word. In English, that sounds a little weird. If you read it in the Greek, it makes much more sense, because what he says is, in the beginning is the Logos, the Word, Logos. That word Logos means word, but it also means logic. The logical system that God created, he created through the Logos. Jesus is the grounding of our being. He's the grounding of reality. Understanding him, drawing close to Jesus, is what makes our life, gives our life meaning. And so existence begins with God, not with cogito, not with thought. That being said, I do recognize the importance of logic, the importance of cogito, the importance of thinking, of intellectual engagement. And yet, there's something deeper, even below that surface, below intellectual engagement, is a relationship with God. That's where we find our grounding. That's where we find our being. As Paul said, that in him we live and move and have our being. So we have to understand that Descartes helped us see the world can and does deceive us. So thank you, Descartes, right? We're not knocking Descartes. We just also understand that he can't give us all the answers. So thank you, Descartes. You are still helping us today. But today, the question isn't, do I exist? Most of us, at least, understand and recognize I do exist. So the real question is not, do I exist, but what kind of person am I becoming? And that's where this channel is focused on formation, on spiritual formation, intellectual formation, emotional formation, forming a worldview. So we are being intentional about our worldview formation. I hope that you cogito often this next week. I hope that you take some time to read through Genesis 1:27 and Acts 17:28, that you recognize that it's in him, in God, that we live, that we move, and that we have our being. Hey, if you found this to be beneficial, if you are enjoying this, I encourage you to share with a friend. As I've said recently, this is a small channel, and so every like, share, subscribe, comment is helpful, is beneficial, and gets us into that almighty algorithm that we all live within. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, or you just want to talk about something in the future coming weeks or months, drop me a comment and let me know. I will be around, and we're going to keep doing this week after week. As always, I love you. We're creating a space where we can think and engage intellectually and challenge each other. So please feel free to challenge me. Some of you have already done it, and I appreciate that. I love that. That's what we're here for. So have a great week. I love you, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.